Thank you, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be back in Istanbul. Yilmaz and I go back, what did we decide, 20 years? More, 25. When I asked him to be on the board of Inmet Mining when I was the chair, and we had a mine in Çayeli, so I came to Istanbul very frequently. But with your morning speaker, Françoise Bertrand, and I have been here twice to speak. And both times we've been in Istanbul, it's been wet, windy, cold, and gray. So I've been advised, Yilmaz, that we have to come back in September. Is that the right time? Yes. Okay. Which we will do next year. But thank you for coming. I'm going to start first by talking a little bit about the compass points of good governance, which I'm thrilled to see translated into Turkish. But I'm going to go through the main points of it pretty quickly in English, just to give you some sense of the kinds of things I was trying to do. Any sailors in the room? Ah, good. So you know to find out where you are without GPS, you need a compass and a sextant and a chronometer, and then you need sight reduction tables. And that's how you get yourself from A to B without ending up in a reef. So this is the boat that I sailed on for a year and a half in the South Pacific, 3,500 miles. We went from New Guinea down the Australian coast, across the Tasman Sea, around New Zealand, and ended up surviving a couple of horrendous storms. Because what you forget about when you think of the South Pacific, oh, beautiful sunshine, warmth, you forget the fact that you're in an ocean. And the waves can be 60, 70 feet high, so here we are being thrown around. We almost died twice. It was a very traumatic kind of passage, but fortunately we survived, and this is us as we got off the boat. My kids, when we got off, were 4, 6, 8, and 10. So when they got on, they were 3, 5, 7, and 9. Not a very experienced crew, but we managed to make it. But when I gave this talk to one of my colleagues, he said, well, so you sail with your 4 kids. Why would we trust your judgment? Good point. Okay, my compass, north, east, south, and west. I think you need to have each of these vectors pretty thoroughly established, and I've tried to synthesize. I've been on 40 different boards of directors in 5 different countries, and I've chaired 9 different companies. So I've had a lot of on-the-ground experience, and I've tried to pull that together into these compass points. So on the north side, you've got who's there. Who's around the table? What skills do they bring? That's the hard side. That's the resume side. Then the soft side is how do they behave in a small group with 8 other people? Do they try to take up all the air, or do they try to just disappear? And how do we get them to participate effectively? Madame Bertrand said today one of the tricks she used as the chair is to do a tour de table, which is to go around and point to each director in turn and say, now what do you think about this? What is your view? What is your view? As opposed to saying, how do you think the meeting went? Or what do you think we ought to do? To go around a tour de table. Very interesting. The soft side, and collectively, you've got to gel as a board. You are a team. So you're a collection of individuals, typically, who don't know each other very well, because you come from different parts of the world or the country, from different professions, so you haven't met each other professionally. And the purpose of the gelling is to make a sense of teamwork, that we are collectively together in trying to add value to this company. So that's the north side. And the east, the agenda. Now, I always try to remember, and I don't get it right all the time, you should never ask, how did we spend our time as a board? You should always ask, how did we invest our time as a board? Because then the anticipation is, did the company get a return on that investment? Whereas if you say, how did we spend our time, it's gone, it's out of the pocket, it's an expense, it's disappeared. So I always try to remember to say, how did we invest our time? And that's why I think the agenda is a huge investment decision. And as a chair, I probably spent more hours working on the agenda with my colleagues in the management team than any other function in my role as chair. You had to get that if in your meeting, which is relatively brief, you're using your time to the maximum effectiveness to create value for the company. On the south side, briefings. The National Association of Corporate Directors in the United States polled all of its members, I don't know, 15,000 corporate directors from the private sector, from PE, from venture capital, as well as from large established companies. What is the biggest single impediment that you find when you are trying to add value to the company? And the answer was the quality of the briefing papers we get. 60% of all the directors polled came up with that same answer. Interestingly, and maybe it's not the same in Turkey yet, but in North America, there isn't a management school that teaches you how to make an argument that is clear, memorable, and compelling. Lawyers tend to get there pretty quickly because they always have to have a perspective. But in the management schools, nobody teaches you that. So the quality of briefing papers coming to you across the boardroom table are hugely various. Some are terrible, some are awful, some are pathetic, some are good, some are helpful, and some are really useful. So it depends. Now, Vodafone, you work very hard at your briefing papers, I'm sure, right? But that's a huge, huge challenge, as well as the agenda. And then we have the structural components, and the required ones in North America are audit, HR and compensation, and governance. But more and more, people are asking, given the artificial intelligence revolution, should we be doing something on the risk, on a special risk committee on what this is going to mean to us? Should we have a technology committee? Walmart has a technology committee that invites non-fiduciary directors to the committee as members. So it's not a fiduciary responsibility of that committee to be looking after the company, but it's a responsibility of the individual experts to help the directors who are fiduciary understand better the roles that they could play and the help they could give to management. That's a big growing area, a sort of unofficial structural change. Stakeholders, what do you do about them? You put them all on the board? And ad hoc committees to deal with this, that, or the other? Or an advisory committee, the same thing. So structurally, you have a lot of weaponry as a board to think about how to bring the needed skill sets into your decision making that otherwise you might not have. All right, so that's it. North, east, south, and west. Hopefully, I'm sure this is better than the original GLS. But as you go through this, you'll find a lot more detail. But those would be the major points to add value to your board. These are the operational things that should be occurring. And at the center of all of this is the chair. Without a good chair, you cannot be an effective director. And that's because the chair is hugely influential, not only in who gets chosen to sit around the board, but how they respond behaviorally in the board meeting, where the chair is uniquely responsible for that behavioral outcome. As I said, when I was chair, I spent twice as much time on this task as any other, making sure that we were going to invest our time to the advantage of the company and to make sure that every meeting was better than the last one. So I used to have as much work after the meeting talking about how it went, one-on-one with each director. There was never a, well, how do you think it went today? Any comments? It's, what did you think? What did you think? What did you think? What did you think? And then I go and I wait another week when the sediment has settled to the bottom of the river, and I phone each one of my directors and say, on reflection, given that we're now 2 weeks by, what went well in that meeting? What didn't go so well? What could we do differently or better to add more value to the operations of the company? At the same time as asking management the same question. So I see it as a continuous improvement cycle, not sort of waiting for the annual board evaluation, but to do it, make every meeting better than the last one. That's the investment, and that's the chair that runs that. I like to think that some chairs actually quality control the documentation going to their board, but not many do. I think everybody should be the beneficiary of that. And of course, deciding on structure and who leads the committees, this chair is an important participant. So if those four compass points hold, the person who holds them all together is the chair. And the chair's ability to be effective in that role depends upon his or her relationship completely with the CEO. If there's no trust between the chair and the CEO, in terms of open, honest, transparent communication, there can be no effective board help. It just is not possible, because if I don't trust you, why would I share with you the things that are on my mind? So having that relationship is vital, and I think it sort of overwhelms almost every other feature of what's in this book. If that doesn't work, I think you should better deploy your own time and effort and responsibilities to another board. I left the Fortune 500 board because the chair, who was a wonderful human being, a tremendously important philanthropist in Chicago, but he couldn't run a meeting at all. And I went twice to see him personally, sit down, have a chat, because it was one of the things that came out of the panel earlier this morning with Françoise Bertrand and her colleagues, was the importance of using time outside of the official board to try to leaven topics, to raise them difficult challenges. And one of the things that I went twice to Chicago to speak to Mike. This isn't working. We're in the metallurgical coal business. Coal is beginning a long-term decline, which we think is going to persist for a long time. We've got to get working on how we're going to survive. And he'd say, yes, David, I understand. And then the next board meeting would be more of the same. Never got to the really tough questions of how we were going to survive. So I went to Chicago my third time, and I said, Mike, thank you very much. He'd acquired the company I'd been chairman of. I said, it's been a great, thank you for taking us out. But thank you also very much for introducing me to Walter Energy, which was the company I was on the board of. But I have to resign, because I just cannot be an effective value-added director with this kind of leadership on the board. I'm sorry. I love you as a man, but I think you're an incompetent chair, so I'm going. And that would be my advice to any of you. If you find yourself stymied because the chair's relationship with the CEO isn't working, or because the chair is not getting sufficiently involved in the investment decision-making around your time, leave. You're all talented, gifted executives and people. Leave and go somewhere else where your potential is going to be realized, because it can't be realized if this thing doesn't work. Okay, here's my favorite man. Anybody know Benjamin Zander? Yeah, yes, good for you, Gomez. Benjamin Zander was a conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. And this is a wonderful TED Talk from at least a decade ago, for 18 minutes, the transformative power of classical music. It's a lovely 18-minute interlude in your life if you get a chance. He said at about minute 12 and a half, he said, I suddenly turned 40, and I thought for the first time ever in my life, I'm the only person on the stage who doesn't make a sound. I have 125 gifted virtuoso musicians behind me. They make all the noise. My job is to pull together all that talent into a coherent whole, not to make a sound myself. And I thought to myself, that is a perfect metaphor for a great chair. Not to assert his or her personality on the decision making, but to engender the participation of everybody, all the talent around the table to get to a better set of decisions for the company. So Ben Zander, I met him once, but my conducting model, bring together everybody on the stage who has talent into a coherent whole. That is the essential job of the chair. And he has to deal with the talent, as we talked about. The tone of the meetings is entirely his, and the time invested in various activities is entirely in the hands of the chair of the board. So, it's been hard. Being a value-added director has never been easy. I don't think it's ever been tougher, and I don't think it's going to get any easier. And see, these are some of the things that are happening. Firstly, there's a stakeholder. Firstly, note that I have a woman director demonstrating this point, right? All right, the number of women on boards in Canada has doubled from 20 to 40% in the last decade. So we're getting close to 50-50. I don't know what the target should be, but we used to have women's promotion clubs to get to 30%. Well, they've had to rename themselves, 45% club now. So stakeholder invasion has transformed everything. With social media, stuff that was outside now becomes inside almost instantaneously. The boards need to respond quicker and quicker and quicker to these pressures, and it's getting greater and greater every day. And so the chair of the board says, okay, all right, you can come in, but we're not up to giving the comfy chairs yet, because there's so many stakeholders around. In 2025, in the proxy season, there were over 500 proxy resolutions in the Fortune 500 companies, covering everything from anti-ESG, social matters, political investments, climate change, and governance itself. And this stuff, while it's tailing off a little bit under Mr. Trump, is still huge. Environmental and social issues, probably a direct function of the president, have declined to about 10% of the proxies from the peak in 2021 of over 50. So there are quite a lot of changes in stakeholder participation in annual general meetings, and I expect that to change continuously. This is Lawrence Cunningham, the presiding director of the Weinberg Center for Corporate Governance. Said corporate America faces enough real challenges in terms of global competition, innovation, and technological disruption without its annual meeting becoming dueling stages for esoteric or ideological theater. Ensuring discipline in the shareholder proposal process is a modest but valuable step towards letting boards govern and investors invest. Interesting. So there's a whole pushback on a wide variety of items that various stakeholders are trying to bring into your boardroom and bring into your considerations. Happily, in a way, directors are still approved 92% of the time in the United States without comment. So directors seem fairly stable in their careers and are not going to be thrown out too quickly. Secondly, activist pressures. If you take a look at these regions, this is 2025. In the United States, there were 579 public activist campaigns that became public. They estimate that for every one that became public, there were 2 that didn't become public because they were settled or the activist went away. So if that's 600, that's 1,800 activist campaigns conducted in 1 year in the United States. And you'll see that it's not just simply the US, it's all over the world. Activism has become a major employer of young analysts who seek to change the management strategy, who seek to change the corporation's outlook and maybe its board and maybe its management team. That's not going away. So that's number 2. And these are the ones publicly subjected in 2026 Q1, so it brings it right up to date. Q1 is down slightly, but these are large numbers internationally. They're huge numbers when you think about it. So that's not gone. Third, asset manager pressures. 3 companies control almost 35% today of the market capitalizations of the largest S&P 500 companies. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, all through their exchange-traded funds, the ETFs. That's an enormously large number for 3 people to be responsible for. And so how are they doing that? And what are you supposed to do with them? Do you get to know Larry Fink at BlackRock? Is that what you do? Or Michelle Atkins, who's in charge of governance? And you know, where does she go for her information? Because they own 5,000 different companies around the world. And the answer is they go to ISS, which is interesting. And then geopolitical events, which according to a McKinsey study of just a month ago, is now number 1 in terms of geopolitical instability, is what's happening in the United States. So we're in an era of really prolonged anxiety about what policy is going to be and how they're going to emerge. And so in March of this year, the number is 525. This is another McKinsey chart of economic policy uncertainty in the US. And look at that. That was COVID before, and then Mr. Trump chopped it up. And as of the day I last looked at it in March, the number was 525. It was still hugely high. So there's another pressure on the management team, supply chains, how you actually get to market and what gets to market. So as a result of that, on average, the number, this only goes to 2022, but the number of hours that an average board of an S&P 500 companies invests, I almost said spent, invests, has risen another up to 31 days a year from 25. So 25% increase in time so far. And that's only to 2022, so I would expect it's probably going to continue to rise, which means the job is more time consuming and more onerous. And one of the things the panel that Françoise Bertrand was on today, their conclusion was these hours are going to increase, and they're only hours when there's no crisis. When you get on a board and there's a crisis, a CEO crisis, a market crisis, you lose your life. You can't, that's why we talk about overboarding. You can't be on more than 3 large publicly traded companies in the US without ISS and Glass Lewis voting against you as a director. Because it's okay as long as things are going along, quote, normally, whatever that means. But if you get into a crisis, you're gone. You lose your entire life. So you can't be on 3 boards and then 2 of them have a crisis. There's just not enough hours in the day. So directors are spending more time, and this concept was introduced at VIA on the basis of our knowledge and understanding of our indigenous peoples. The indigenous Iroquois group of 7 different tribes were all led by females. And they all had a common disposition to try to say, what is the impact of this 7 generations ahead? Isn't that interesting? I can't even count that high. My grandchildren are old enough, but that's only 2, right? 7 generations. So there was a huge orientation to the longer term impacts of the policy decisions we make. When you have a board table of, in this case, 10 with a chair, so 11, we can't possibly cover all the stakeholder interests or all of the areas of information we need to cover. So I'd like you to have a little bit of humility and to ask yourselves, if we had had this kind of expertise when we made that decision, would it have been a better decision, or could it possibly have been a better decision? And if the answer is yes, chair makes a note, what kind of decision-making abilities or skills should I have had? And if they're sufficiently repetitive through major decisions, then when you go to set your skills matrix and you're hiring to replace directors, you know where you're heading. The second thing it does is, besides giving you a direction of skills, I think it embeds a little bit of humility. We do not have all the answers to every problem in the human world. We're doing the best we can, but we should have some humility. And in the case of our Indigenous directors, of whom we have, I think, something in the order of 25 on major Canadian boards, they say when David comes to the board, it's David. And David's making the decision based on David's parameters. When I come to the board as J.P. Gladue at a board of Suncor, a huge oil and gas company, I come not only for myself, but I'm representing the 20 members in my community. And I will ask myself, I wonder what my father and grandfather would have done. And looking forward, I'll ask, what is the impact of this 7 generations ahead? So what we've decided for large publicly traded companies that have the benefit of Indigenous directors now is you've got to give them more time to come to their decisions than if you just had a whole bunch of David Beatty and Françoise Bertrands who make the decisions on their own judgment and their own wisdom, without respect to generations past and generations future. It's a very strong idea, the empty chair. And when Françoise left VIA, they presented her with an empty chair and a plaque on it which said, "An empty chair, but never unoccupied. A voice inaudible, but always present. This seat reminds us that leadership extends beyond the walls of this room to those we serve today and those who will inherit it tomorrow." I just, lovely. So it's a very strong idea, I think, for boards to have an empty chair so marked in the boardroom, so that we have this sense of humility and we have this sense of intergenerational responsibility. And now we've got the digital tsunami. So I hope as you read through this that you will find some things of interest to you, and please let Yilmaz and or me know so that we can improve it. I made it as a booklet, Yilmaz, as opposed to a book, so it could be continuously improved as well. But thank you very much. The first foreign translation, and I think I only charged you, what, $2 million was it for taking my intellectual property rights? Can't remember. Anyhow, okay, so I'm now going to go into the digital tsunami, which is what are we doing in this world that we might think about doing very differently, or what's going to be enforced on it. This is the question that PwC asked of 4,410 CEOs in 105 countries. If your company continues running on its current path, for how long do you think your business will be economically viable? What do you think some of the answers were? Anybody? No? Yes? No? Okay. This is what the CEOs, nearly 40% of the CEOs they polled don't think their companies will be economically viable a decade from now if they continue on their current plan. That's a huge, huge number, right? 40%. It used to be when I was teaching strategy, I used to have this term, LTSCDA, which stands for Long-Term Sustainable Competitive Differentiated Advantage. And we got some moats to protect our boat from other people. LTSCDA. Today, that's become SSSST, Significantly Shortened Strategic Survival Time. And it's a nice transmission of how the world used to be to where we're headed today and where we're getting to now. This is a reported use of AI, another McKinsey chart, in at least one business function, and it continues to rise and rise dramatically. And you'll see even the use of generative AI is exploding as well. So this is really the pace of change in this world is exponential. We're linear people, right? Mother, father, two kids each, that's 4. This is how we typically grow. We don't grow exponentially. So I think we have a really tough intellectual time actually trying to understand what an exponential growth rate means. But the people I teach with in Google, I say some of our tools in Google DeepMind in London are improving 100% every 3 months. Now, if you compound that, that's 35,000 times in a 5-year plan. That's a lot, right? So exponentiation takes you into an entirely different universe than linear growth. As a result of which, some of the people I watch most closely in this arena, this is Dr. Peter Diamandis, says, we are truly living during the most extraordinary time ever. This is different. This is substantively different than any other transition in technology in human history. Ray Kurzweil, who's been, I'll show you a little bit more about him, but he's been thinking about this his entire working life, and he says we will experience as much change in the next decade, 2025 to 2035, as humanity had during the past century. Centuries today, it's a diminution of 10 times, right? How about that? So this is not sort of a technological change. This is an exponential change in computing power. This is what this chart shows. Hyperscalers, the size of this stuff. This is the people building data centers. And you'll see that they're up to $1 trillion a year. And these are some of the other major things that happened in U.S. history. The interstate highway, the U.S. railroads, the F-35 program, and so on. Look, there's no comparison into the amount of investment being made into this technological revolution to any other revolution we've had. Railways are pretty important, as I recall. But that's it. We're there. And it's the fastest diffusion of any general technology ever. So we have electricity, internet, radio, cell phones, smartphones, all of them pretty dramatic. But artificial intelligence is going almost straight up. That's never happened before either. So we're in a completely different age. This bears no comparison to anything else we've done. I'll just take you through some of the things that have happened. Some of you may remember it was May of 1997. Anybody remember that? You weren't alive, most of you then. Oh, yes, you were, okay. 1997, Big Blue, the massive computer out of IBM, beat Garry Kasparov at chess. That was seen by many as to be amazing, a turning point for artificial intelligence and for chess. So that's 1997. We go forward another 2 decades to 2016. AlphaGo, a program built by Demis Theasibus in Google DeepMind in London, their Sync Lab, beat Lee Sedol, the 9gant or whatever they called him, the best Go player in the world, was beaten by a machine, AlphaGo. Now, that's amazing. And say there's a move in here that happens at move 37. This program learned by analyzing 100,000 expert games. They took from the people around the world, give us the best games ever been played in the game of Go. They took 100,000 of them, they trained their program on those 100,000 games. And it beat the 9gant player in the world. To the astonishment of about 150 million people who were watching this on television, mainly in the eastern part of the globe. Amazing. There are more moves, potentially, in the game of Go than there are particles in the earth. That's the complexity we're dealing with now. They built a machine that could beat any human at this game. And that was a 5-game match. Then, and here he is, that's Lee Sedol on the left there as you look, right here. And he was completely perplexed by one of the moves they made called Move 37, which they felt would be 1 in 10,000 times by a human. And it took Lee Sedol 12 minutes to decide how to respond to this move because he thought it was maybe a mistake. In subsequent discussions, he decided this was one of the greatest strategic changes in the game of Go that transformed it forever. The machine came up with it. And this was the machine that was trained on 100,000 games. Then, going on at DeepMind at the same time, they had given 2 computers the rules of the game of Go. And they played 10 billion games against each other and each learned from the games. And when they played that program against the one that they had beaten the real human being on, that program won 100-0. So the improvement in the technology within a short space of 2 or 3 months was almost infinite. And that's what we're facing now in almost every human endeavor. The pace of change here is unrelenting, it's exponential, and unless you get started on it, you're not going to win. This is AlphaFold, which solved a 50-year-old problem in biology. How do we fold DNA strands to make proteins? And DeepMind found that with a program called AlphaFold, which gave Demis Hassabis a Nobel Prize in chemistry and biophysics. Not bad, eh? Then they went from AlphaGo to AlphaGo 10 to AlphaFold. You can see the huge increase here in capability of the artificial intelligence machine. And then AlphaEvolve took Move 37 idea from Go, and it changed the way in which we now solve a 56-year-old problem of 4x4 complex matrix multiplication. No one had ever done that before. No one thought it was possible to do it before, and AlphaFold came up with the solution. So we have 1997, then we fast forward to our century, 2016, you got AlphaGo, then 2024, we got AlphaFold, 2025, we have AlphaEvolve. I mean, this thing is just going straight up with their capabilities of solving all kinds of problems in humanity. So by now, 2026, AI is making its Move 37 in every field of science simultaneously. So there's a convergence of not just one exponentiation, but 3, 4, or 5. The iPhone itself was a convergence of 3 different things. So that's where we are. And this company, Lila, which is going to be publicly traded, run by a PhD, is building scientific superintelligence to solve humankind's greatest challenges. Perhaps medical. I don't think they'll do the surgery, doctor, but they'll certainly be able to solve a lot of medical challenges. And they say that Lila is building an AI science factory, fully autonomous laboratories where AI systems generate hypotheses on their own, design experiments to test the hypotheses on its own, operate lab equipment to take physical proof on its own, analyze the results on its own, and generate at machine speed with minimal human intervention. And their mission is to build scientific superintelligence to solve humankind's greatest challenge. It's out there, it's financed, it's working, it's running, and you can check it out today, Lila. Take a look at it. So this is the deep blue moment from 1997 of IBM beating Garry Kasparov for science. It's all going to converge together. It's going to change everything we know about the human body and how to fix it before it gets hurt. So we'll be moving from curative medicine to preventative medicine within 5 years. Almost perfectly guaranteed. So this is a supersonic tsunami, not just a normal digital tsunami, supersonic, of converging exponentials that they say in this chart is going to be in the next 6 months. We're going to see stuff pouring out of this. All right, this is my teaching partner, Nick Darvo-Garno, who was Google's chief evangelist for 7 years, had a staff of 60, visited 350 to 400 CEOs a year, and asked them, what are you doing about artificial intelligence? What are you doing about digital technology? What? The purpose was to get more ad revenue into Google, but the actual content of the discussions related to what are you as an organization doing in the face of these complex and fast expanding areas. So he spoke to Elon Musk a couple of months back, and he said, Elon, 10 years from now, what will be Tesla's competitive advantage? And he was thinking longer battery life, shortened recharging cycles, more recharging stations, that kind of stuff. You know what his answer was? No one else will be as fast. And I'd never thought of this. But he says, when we get a great idea for Tesla, we put it into the next car. I don't wait for the model years to change. I put it into the next car. And I had never ever thought of anything except car model years. But he completely transformed that idea, put it right into the next vehicle. Then he went to his own boss, Sundar Pichai, and that culture of Google is to grow constantly, to improve 1% a day. And as of a year ago, they had 600 PhDs in machine learning. 600. I mean, this is a factory of intelligence trying to create a new future. And he asked the same question to Sundar. The only sustainable competitive advantage, Sundar Pichai said, at Google is speed. Same message as Elon Musk. Speed. You've got to be able to transform. You've got to be able to move fast when these new things happen. You've got to move, you've got to move, you've got to move. So He thinks half the S&P 500 companies will be gone in the next decade. They just will not have the cultural capacity to move as fast as they need to move to survive and to stay alive. So I look back, we were hunter-gatherers for several million years. We got pretty good at that. That evolved into agricultural behavior and the growth of towns and communities. We did that for several thousand years. Then we went to the industrial age, where we've been for a couple of centuries, maybe 3, maybe 4 centuries, but it was centuries, not thousands, not millions. Then we went into the information age, and now we're in what my friend at Google, Nick, says, we are in the augmentation age. We're just emerging, where our ability to think is going to be augmented by other tools. Think about that. So we've moved from a passive tool, that's a Stone Age guy trying to take the skin off of some animal that he just shot for his own feeding, to generative tools, tools that look at your problem, they decide on their solution to your problem, they then test it out, and then they feed it continuously back to you. We've never done this before. Augmenting your own intellect. Other people do. Other people can ignite your excitement and your curiosity. This is a systemic machine that works 24/7, costs you basically nothing. And it'll phone you up in the morning and say, Yilmaz, what's on your agenda today? This is Buddy, your AI agentic agent. What do you want to do today? On its own. This has never happened. And this is Mr. Kurzweil again. He's charted since World War II, when we broke the German Enigma code, the cost per computation, price performance and computations per second per constant dollar. And that hasn't transformed at all, hasn't changed at all. And where we are now is with the NVIDIA H100 general processing unit processor, we're now way up into the hundreds of trillions of operations per constant dollar. When back as early as 1942, it cost us $100,000 per calculation. I mean, the transformation is incredible. Mr. Kurzweil says this is not going to stop. This is not a sort of a fad that's going to peak and then go down. This is going to continue to increase. Exponential improvement on an exponential scale. Who the heck knows what that means? It simply means you better get moving now or you're dead. And some of the things that are happening, these advanced computer systems are now built atom by atom. Some of the smallest are 50 nanometers tall. The human hair is maybe 1,000 nanometers. So this is infinitesimally small, something you can't see without a microscope. And they turn on and off billions of times a second. Are you aware of that? Did you know that's where they're going? And they're huge, you know, they're not just one little bit, but there's just 1 square millimeter can be home to 200 million transistors with tens of billions across a chip that NVIDIA builds. I mean, this stuff is incredible. So the physical infrastructure around these machines is improving constantly. And Nicholas Kristof, the New York Times senior editor, said in August the 4th, 2024, this is the most revolutionary technology since Prometheus brought us fire. And you hear a lot about, you know, boundaries and care we need to take and guardrails we need to build. We had the same problem with fire, right? It could cook the meat, could keep you warm, but it could burn you if it touched it, and it could smoke you out and give you lung cancer. So there were pluses and minuses to the technology, but overall the thing revolutionized human existence. Who's in the same position today with AI and generative AI? This is going to transform our lives in every single way, shape, and form. I think it, for business, I liken it to an extinction event. You don't get involved in this, you're gone. Period. Full stop, the end. So, what do you do about this? I think the unprecedented opportunities, we all start in the same place. None of us understand exponentials. None of us really have understood AI before the last 5 or 10 years. So we're all starting off the same place. I just wanted to show you this, because I did this a year ago. I asked, the prompt was, the Glenfillan Viaduct is a historic railway bridge in Scotland. Please show me a steam train going across the bridge. 15 seconds later, this is what came back. Not too shabby, eh? 15 seconds of a transformative program that makes a verbal prompt a visualization moving picture. I then said, listen, I'd like to see a couple of mammoths Walking in the winter with a young one in a snowstorm is what came back. 15 seconds. Isn't that one? It's amazing, isn't it? And this is a year old. So the ones they do now last about a minute. One of the problems that Hollywood is facing, within 5 years, it'll be a 3-hour moving picture. You just give it a few prompts. I want to have a moving picture of, and it'll say, who do you want starring in it? And I'll say, well, I want this person and that person, and how long do you want it to be? And it'll come back as a full feature movie. That's one of the reasons they went on strike. So my message to all of you is you got to get moving on AI as individuals and as corporations and as not-for-profits and as academies. And you can do that in a number of different ways. You can get ChatGPT, which I would hope most of you have already tried. Gemini is a Google one. Perplexity, I use Claude myself. Claude's Opus 4.7 came out last week. 4.6 was out 2 months ago, now they're at 4.7. It's amazing what it does. I took a board paper. I run the audit committee of a mining company, and I'm really not interested in auditing. So I put the audit committee papers through Opus 4.7, and I said, what are the things I should be wary of here? And it came back and it said, you know, David, that looks pretty good, but if you were going to ask any questions, here are the top 3 I'd ask. Great, that just saved me 40 minutes, you know. So you've just got to get started. Pick one of them, doesn't matter. The ChatGPT, the DeepSeek, the Field at a Glance. We'll give you all these slides afterwards in a PDF form, just so you don't have to study them today. But this stuff is improving, I'd say on average every 2 months. There's a new version of each one of these that takes it a huge step further. Opus 4.7 is significantly better than Opus 4.6, and Opus 4.6 has only been alive for 4 months. And Opus 4.7 came out, and it's hugely better. So, main message number 1, get started. You cannot afford to sit on your hands and delay it. I want each one of you to go home tonight, if you haven't spent an hour on any one of these programs, and invest an hour of your lives in finding out what it can do. And then ask yourself, where else could it go? So it's AI or die, in my view. I'm quite adamant about this. You embrace AI to survive and thrive. If you don't, you'll die. Now this is the new one. This is an agentic AI called OpenClaw. You cannot put that on your base computer because it'll go through everything it wants and do what it wants to do. So I said to Yilmaz, you know, all of your notes to your colleagues about how we could improve the academy are going to be made available to the entire world if you put OpenClaw on your main computer. So you have to buy a little computer to help, and Mini Mac is the little computer of choice. You now have to wait 3 months for Mini Macs because so many people have ordered them to do that. Then you put OpenClaw on Mini Mac. It is called by Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the single most important release of software probably ever. It's an agentic AI. It acts on its own. It phones you up in the morning and says, David, it's 7:30. You wanted to get up at 7:25. What's the matter with you? I see you're not moving. So you have no choice but to follow these instructions. Beidou had 1,000 people attend a free install and use party in Beijing. Anybody who wanted to come, we put all of our employees to work teaching them how to use OpenClaw because we believe that the society will be so much enhanced by everybody's use of this. And then the Chinese cities are now offering free housing, office space, and up to $720,000 US in subsidies for startups building on OpenClaw. Like China finds out about it on Monday. Wednesday they have 100,000 people in a square learning how to use it. And Friday they announce that they're giving you subsidies. Instant, speedy reaction to this new phenomenon. So the way we use AI is about to change dramatically. Used to be, we ask a question, we get an answer. Now we say, give a goal. I want to find out what's happened in corporate governance around the world in the last 48 hours. Bang. You receive the result and you iterate it. So AI today is missing 3 things. There's no growth. It doesn't learn from its own work. It doesn't build skills. It doesn't get smarter. And the same capability on day 1,000 as day 1. No growth. Nobody. Can't use your computer, can't browse the web, can't send messages. It can think, but it can't do anything. It's all brains, no hands. And then no agency. It never takes the initiative. It only responds when asked. It doesn't monitor, it doesn't scan, it doesn't act. Purely reactive. So this is where we're going. It's going to turn AI from a chatbot into an employee. It's self-improving. Creates skills on the fly. updates its own knowledge base, gets smarter and smarter every day. The body, it uses your computer. It'll browse, it'll code, it'll message you, it'll manage your files. An agency, it works 24/7 autonomously, so a lot better than an average human worker. It monitors, scans, acts without being asked. So you might well get a telephone call in the middle of the day from your AI agentic agent saying, David, I thought today you were going to, and it seems to me you haven't done it yet. What on earth is going on? And you'll say, I'm sorry, buddy, I made a mistake. He said, yeah, well, don't let it happen again. So it becomes an active agent in your life, like an employee, only you don't have to pay them. It works 24/7. It never gets tired and is constantly learning and improving. How many human brains do that, right? This is brand new stuff. That's why Jensen Huang called it the most important software evolution ever. So it's AI as a tool to AI as a worker. And that's now started with OpenClaw. There's going to be 50 more of these programs in the next 6 months, I reckon. Certainly 2 or 3 you can use. So this is how the fellow who taught me all this said, how I run it. My home office is 24/7. I use Mac Studios and so on across the page. As I say, we'll give you these charts to look at a little later. But imagine this, a team, your management team works 24/7, never calls in sick, never takes a vacation, never has to take a day off, costs a fraction of one's salary, and gets better every week. I mean, it's hard to beat that conceptually, isn't it, if true? But I think it's happening today. So what we do today is we install OpenClaw, you tell it about yourself, you ask how it can help, and it does one single thing best. That's the way to start, and then you expand from there. So the fellow I learned this from now has one agent managing 6 other employees, in quotes. So he now has a staff of 7, working full-time, 24/7, never calling in sick, and continuously improving. Wow, that's pretty good, hey? Mustafa, do you think that's pretty? Yeah, amazing. So where's this going as a director? Well, the UAE's biggest company is adding an AI-powered observer backed by Microsoft to its board. The international holding company created a new non-voting board observer position for AI observer called Aiden Insight. That's interesting. So you've got to subscribe to one of these 2 vehicles, and it's not inexpensive, but CB Insights and or PitchBook both track venture capital and private equity progress. And there's something in the order of 100,000 new private equity companies started a year. There's $2 trillion in private equity coffers to invest in these new ventures, and you can be sure they're just exploding with insight and new applications that we've never heard of before or thought of. So you've got to get onto both of those in order to really keep up with this, what's going. And these guys who are running the affairs now are really big. This is NVIDIA, market cap of 2.6 trillion. Tim Cook at Apple, about to go, 3.2 trillion. Satya Nadella at Microsoft, 2.7. Andy Jassy at Amazon, 1.9. And Sundar Pichai at Google, 3.8. With Mark Zuckerberg at 1.5. Total $20 trillion in total market cap. They're dominating the field. They're running away from everybody else. They're not going to let up. In terms of total sales, $2 trillion, these companies, these 6 companies. And in terms of free cash flow, $400 billion. When they think they see a good new idea, they'll put a couple of $100 million in it just to try it out. It just doesn't matter. And that is happening every day of the year. So this is their big tech spending free, which you'll see is now up to $70 billion per quarter. That's an annualized rate of expenditure of $280 billion in data centers. And they're hyperactive. This is a capital expenditure by these guys over the next year or so, $700 million. And Fortune says inside the $22 trillion world of private capital, an asset class so big it would be the world's 2nd largest economy. You've got to find out what's going on in there. And did you have any idea of the size of these data centers? I tend to think of a computer as my little thing on my desk. It runs on 50,000 NVIDIA chips. And look, it goes through 1 million gallons of water a day to keep them cool. It uses huge amounts of power. That's one of them. That's the campus in Texas. This is another campus of another data center. This is another one. This is Metis. This is a 3rd one. This is a 4th one, Prometheus. And there are hundreds of them in the United States, and there's beginning to be a bit of a backlash because it's taking away electrical power from the circuitry, and it's taking away water. So there's a big problem in terms of building, so it may slow down, but look at the number of them. And the thing about them is that they are hugely interconnected. That's the network of infrastructure that connects all of these data centers to internet and the rest of the world. That is hugely complex, hugely difficult to replicate. So the UAE is turning its optimism into a physical footprint, building the largest AI data center on Earth, a 5 gigawatt campus that dwarfs every other project. So we got the first project down there, the second one, the third one, and this is UAE's version. 2.5 million NVIDIA chips. Each of those chips is costing something like $50,000 to $75,000. 2.5 million of them in their data center. Covers vast amounts of area, but the advantage in the UAE, there's a lot of sun. So a lot of the power will be solar generated power. That's why Elon Musk is thinking of putting up a whole bunch of satellite data centers, because they can take off the sun and they don't have the cooling problem. So he's probably right. We'll probably have a whole bunch of satellites launched to build space-based data centers. The total amount of capital on this endeavor will be something in the order of $6.7 trillion through 2030. 6.7 trillion. Never been an investment horizon like this before. And as you see on the right-hand side of this chart, that's the exponentiation of the H100 chips. They are improving by 100% every 5 months. The chips of one company. And they get better and better. They're 2.5 times, and there's more of them out there, and the ability to change the algorithms is improving enormously, and the forward-looking estimates. So I just wanted to show you this. This is a 10-year cycle from 2014 to 2022, so it's only 8. We are faster and more effective at a speed of 10 points to the 9th. That's more than 1 billion times better than 10 years ago. That's a big number, right? 1 billion times better in 10 years. This is what's happening in our world. So the next time it gets 1 billion times better, it'll probably be 5 years. And then the time after that, it'll be 3 years, and then 2. And then pretty soon it's going to get 1 billion times better every time you blink. That's where we're headed. So what are you doing about it? This is a new engine of civilization. Here's a guy, Bill Gross, who started PIMCO. So he's a multi-billionaire in the investment business. A little bit younger than Ilmez and I, but not that much. So he was looking at this and saying, where do I start? And he said, you should be starting by thinking of AI as your thinking partner. It helps you think through issues. It answers questions you might have that you never thought of. And he said, what really surprised me wasn't what AI did when I got to it. It was how close I came to forgetting that I should use it. That's interesting, eh? And I've had that same experience. I was writing another booklet on board evaluations. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to put my draft into Opus 4.7 and ask it. There's a lady named Beverly Behan who's written a book on board evaluations. There must be stuff from Wharton, from Harvard, from Stanford, from INSEAD, you know. Go look at all those sources, compare it to my draft, and tell me what I should fix. And I'd say within 15 minutes, I got back a really good briefing, which probably saved me a month of work. I didn't have to read any of it. I could just take it for granted that they'd done a reasonable job in synopsizing the external sources. So, how close I came to forgetting to use it. And now what you have to learn to do is how to prompt, because that's how you talk to these machines, and you get better and better. So I'll just flip through these quickly. But these are some of the 10 things that he decided, Bill Gross, at PIMCO, that he could get better answers from his large language models. Help me think this through without telling me what to do. What am I likely to misunderstand about this? Give me 3 unconventional solutions to this problem. I'm putting together a cozy gift basket with a candle, mug, tea, and for my wife. Help me. Ask me 5 clarifying questions before doing any answers. Give Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT the same task and have them argue about it. Then give me the result. What would I do if I had 50 people working on this? Write 2 internal memos dated 18 months from now. Simulate a board meeting with 5 persona, the CFO, the CTO, the head of sales, customers, and competitors. Have them all disagree. Interesting. And generate 5 solutions to my problem with a stricter constraint than the last. There's no new budget, there's no new people, must ship in 72 hours, and on it goes. So this is him learning how to talk to his large language model, which is a skill you must learn how to develop. You can go to any engineering school, but I found that Vanderbilt University has a really great collection of prompting lessons, which you can get for free. So it's worth spending a little time learning how to talk to these language models so that you can get better answers from them. Now, this is my last piece. This company, Generative, is #1 in the world in telematics. It installs machines in trucks and cars and vehicles and anything that moves. They transmit data in the gigabits by nanosecond up to the cloud and back down. This company, Generative, started in 2004 by Neil Cause, has now got 5 million vehicles on the road in North America. Right now, as I speak, it's 8 o'clock in North America now. There'll be 5 million vehicles on the road running their telemetry systems. So what's Neil's favorite thing to do? Program. That's what he loves to do. And then a Sunday afternoon, he'll go and he'll program until he's sort of spent. So what he did is he took the ChatGPT large language model. He went to, I think ChatGPT is Amazon or Anthropic, I can't remember the sponsor. But he went to the company and he said, build me a boundary around this, because anything I put into it today goes to the world. I want moats around all my large language models so none of it gets out. He then put every single memo he'd ever written about his company since 2004 into the model. He put every single quarterly statement since 2004 into the model. And then he said, help me develop a 2-year plan. Waited 20 minutes, and out came a 2-year plan, which he edited, sent it back, edited again, gave it to his advisory board. And they said, Neil, this is the best strategic plan you've ever produced. How did you do that? So what he's done is he's actually now got a mentor for himself. His board said it was the best plan ever. He has a mentor now. He can play games with his large language model. Should I be expanding in Argentina faster than Chile? What are the main marketing problems we're going to face in North America in the next 2 years? Any question he wants to ask, he now has somebody to ask it to. And most CEOs say they're all very lonely people. They have nobody to confide in. Now he has somebody. And more than that, his board has been given all these tools as well. So they don't have to wait for the marketing package that's coming 2 weeks before the board meeting. It can ask, what are the main marketing problems in Generative North America at the moment? How do you go about solving them? What do you think our largest customer risk is? I mean, an infinite number of questions the board can now ask the model and get a response. So the board has got a differentiation. And I think the old line in the sand, which differentiated management from directors, which we explored thoroughly this morning, noses in, fingers out, that no longer exists. That's gone. Because I have as much access to as much information as Neil does. And so I'm going to be a much more powerful director because I understand much more about the business. But if you think about this in aggregate, ELMS, it takes away the fundamental information asymmetry between the management team, who are very specific in their knowledge, and the board of directors, which is very generic in their knowledge, talented, gifted executives, but not in that business. They're gifted amateurs. It's going to take away that whole line. As a director, I might well ask the CEO, have you thought about it? I asked the model this. Have you thought about it that way? The dialogue becomes amazingly different between the two. So, I'll end with this. ChatGPT will become the next CEO of OpenAI. Sam Altman's succession plan is turning his entire company over to it. If AI becomes advanced enough to run companies, why not his own? And he said, I should be the most willing to do that. So, life-changing technological innovation, unlike any other in human history. You got to get started personally, and then you got to get it started in every company you touch. Because I think it really is an extinction event for those who don't move. And if you don't get started on this journey, to me there's only one question left to answer, and that's, where do you want to be buried? Thank you.